I walked into my empty house, after 11 months in Afghanistan, dropping my duffel bag on the floor. The familiar scent of home had been replaced with staleness. My fourth tour had been the hardest, not because of combat, but because my marriage to Christy was already falling apart before I left. I noticed the pile of mail on the kitchen counter and sifted through it, stopping cold when I saw official court documents. Child support. For twins. My world shattered as I stared at the words. I had never even known Christy was pregnant. Before I tell you how my world crashed down that morning, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever had someone betray your trust when you least expected it. The first time I met Christy Williams was at a small bar just outside Fort Bragg in North Carolina. I was 28 then, a lieutenant with the Special Forces, celebrating with my team before deployment. Christy stood out immediately with her bright smile and confident presence. She was working as a nurse at the military hospital and understood the life of a soldier better than most civilians. We connected instantly. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from favorite movies to deeper discussions about purpose and sacrifice. By the end of the night, I felt like I had known her for years. We exchanged numbers, and within weeks we were inseparable. Our courtship was fast accelerated by my impending first tour to Iraq. Some might call it rushed, but when you live the military life, you learn that time is precious. We married 3 months after meeting in a small ceremony with my fellow soldiers and her hospital colleagues as witnesses. I deployed 2 weeks later. During that first year of marriage, Christy was everything I could have hoped for. Her letters arrived regularly, full of love and encouragement. During our rare video calls, her face would light up, and she would tell me how proud she was of my service. I would fall asleep in my bunk, thinking of her clutching the wedding photo I kept in my pocket. My first tour lasted 9 months. Coming home to Christy was everything I had dreamed about during those long nights in the desert. We spent every moment together, hiking in the nearby mountains, fixing up our small house and planning for the future. We talked about having children someday, but agreed to wait until my military commitment was less demanding. The second tour came quicker than we expected. 8 months at home. And then I was off to Afghanistan. This deployment was rougher. Our unit lost 2 men in an ambush outside Kandahar. I took some shrapnel to my lower abdomen and spent 3 weeks in a military hospital in Germany before returning to duty. Christy flew out to see me during my recovery. She seemed different then, more distant, but I chalked it up to the stress of almost losing me. After my second tour, our relationship began showing small cracks. Christy worked longer shifts at the hospital. She seemed less interested in our conversations about the future. When I brought up children again, she changed the subject. Still, we had good moments, and I believed we could work through any rough patch. My third tour lasted 10 months. The letters from Christy became less frequent. Our video calls shorter, more formal. When I returned, she had redecorated our house without mentioning it. Small things had changed. She had new friends I had never met. Went to places I had never heard her mention before. I tried to reconnect with her, planning dates and trips like when we first met. Sometimes I would see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, but they were fleeting. We argued more frequently, usually about small things that escalated quickly. The night before I left for my fourth tour, we had the biggest fight of our marriage. Christy accused me of choosing the military over her. I accused her of changing into someone I no longer recognized. We never resolved that argument. I left the next morning with a cold goodbye and the promise that we would figure things out when I returned. During those 11 months in Afghanistan, communication was sparse. A few short letters, several unanswered emails, brief, awkward video calls where neither of us mentioned our problems. I held on to hope that distance would give us perspective, that coming home would allow us to start fresh. I planned to suggest marriage counseling, maybe even consider leaving the military after my current commitment ended. I never expected to come home to divorce papers, let alone a child support lawsuit for children I never knew existed. As I stood in my kitchen reading those court papers again and again, I felt like I was back in that ambush in Afghanistan. the world exploding around me while I struggled to make sense of what was happening. The initial shock gave way to confusion, then anger. According to the documents, Christy was demanding $10,000 monthly in child support for twins who were supposedly mine. The court date was set for the following week. I immediately tried calling Christy. Her number was disconnected. I drove to our house only to find it had been sold months ago. The new owners had no forwarding address. It was as if she had deliberately disappeared only to reappear with this lawsuit. Desperate for answers, I knocked on our former neighbor Harold Simmons's door. The retired Army veteran had always been friendly with us. "Ryan," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "Glad to see you made it back. When did you get home?" "Just today," I replied. "Harold, do you know where Christy moved to? I need to find her urgently." Harold's expression changed. "Son, there are some things you should know. Christy left about 3 months after you deployed. She was pregnant then. Later heard she had twins, but she never brought them around here." My mind raced. The timeline made no sense. If Christy had gotten pregnant right before I left, the children would only be about 2 months old now. But Harold mentioned she was already showing 3 months into my deployment. "Did you ever see the babies?" I asked. Harold shook his head. "Never did. Just heard through mutual acquaintances she had twins. Boy and girl, I think." I thanked Harold and left my thoughts in disarray. I needed professional help. I contacted Marcus Thompson, an attorney who specialized in military family cases and had served in the Rangers before law school. "This doesn't add up," Marcus said after reviewing the documents in his office the next day. "The birth certificates list you as the father, but the dates are suspicious. The twins are listed as being born 7 months after your deployment, which would mean conception just before you left." "That's technically possible," I admitted. "But there's more to this story." I hesitated before sharing the most private detail. During my second tour, I was injured. The shrapnel damaged some arteries, and, well, the doctors told me I likely couldn't father children after that. It's not something I discussed with many people. Christy knew, though. Marcus's expression hardened. "That changes everything. We need to get your medical records from Walter Reed immediately. And we need to investigate what Christy has been doing while you were deployed." Over the next few days, Marcus and his team uncovered disturbing information. Christy had left her nursing job shortly after I deployed. Bank records showed unusual spending patterns, large cash withdrawals and expensive purchases. She had opened new credit accounts in both our names. More concerning were the reports from mutual friends. James Parker, who served in my unit on previous tours, revealed something troubling when I met him for coffee. "I saw Christy at the mall about 6 months ago," James said uncomfortably. "She was with a guy. They looked close. When she saw me, she acted weird, claimed he was her cousin. I didn't believe it, but I figured it wasn't my place to say anything while you were downrange." Other pieces of the puzzle emerged. Christy had apparently told everyone different stories. To some, she claimed I knew about the pregnancy before deploying. To others, she said we had been trying for years. To my commanding officer's wife, she had claimed the pregnancy was a surprise blessing after my injury. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound I had sustained in combat. This was calculated deception, not just an affair or a relationship gone wrong. As the court date approached, Marcus prepared our defense, while I struggled with a maelstrom of emotions: anger, humiliation, confusion, and grief for what I had believed was a real marriage. The final piece fell into place when Marcus obtained my complete medical records from Walter Reed Medical Center, including surgical notes and follow-up examinations that confirmed my inability to father children after the injury. We also found evidence that Christy had accessed these records through her position at the military hospital, meaning she knew with certainty that I could not be the father of her children. Ryan, Marcus said the night before the court date, "Be prepared. Tomorrow will be difficult. Christy likely has no idea we have this evidence. The judge will want DNA testing, but with your medical records we have grounds to contest the very basis of her claim." I barely slept that night, thinking about the woman I had loved, the life I thought we were building, and the elaborate betrayal that had been orchestrated while I was risking my life overseas. The courtroom felt suffocating as I sat beside Marcus at the defendant's table. The wooden chairs, the austere walls, the American flag, standing tall beside the judge's bench, all seemed to be closing in on me. I had faced enemy fire with more composure than I felt in that moment. The door opened, and Christy walked in with her attorney, an expensive-looking lawyer in a tailored suit. She pushed a double stroller containing 2 infants, approximately 1 year old. Our eyes met briefly. Where I expected to see shame, or at least discomfort, I saw only cold calculation and a hint of smugness. She truly believed she would win this case. Judge Thornton, a stern-faced man in his 60s, called the court to order. Christie's attorney, Alexander Burke, presented their case first, speaking with practiced confidence. Your Honor, my client Mrs. Christy Matthews is seeking appropriate child support for her twin children, fathered by Lieutenant Ryan Matthews. The amount requested reflects the defendant's military income benefits and the special needs of raising twins in today's economy. Burke presented birth certificates listing me as the father, and several doctored photographs that had been manipulated to show Christy pregnant before my deployment. He even produced what he claimed was DNA evidence, though I had never submitted to any testing. As you can see, Burke continued, there is irrefutable evidence of paternity. Lieutenant Matthews has neglected his responsibilities to these innocent children. We are requesting $10,000 monthly in support payments, plus back payments, from birth. Throughout this presentation, Christy nodded along, occasionally glancing at me with what appeared to be practiced righteousness. She had even dressed the twins in matching outfits with military-inspired patterns, a calculated visual connection to me. Judge Thornton listened attentively, occasionally making notes. When Burke finished, the judge turned to me. Lieutenant Matthews, you have chosen to contest these claims. Your response, Marcus stood. Your Honor, my client categorically denies paternity of these children. Not only has he never been asked to provide DNA for testing, meaning the supposed evidence is fabricated, but there is a more fundamental issue at play. The judge raised an eyebrow. Continue. During his second tour of duty, Lieutenant Matthews sustained injuries that required extensive surgery. Medical records from Walter Reed confirm that this surgery rendered him incapable of fathering children. Mrs. Matthews, who worked as a nurse at the military hospital, had access to these records and was fully aware of this fact. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Christy's face flushed red, and she leaned urgently toward her attorney, whispering frantically. Judge Thornton looked directly at me. Lieutenant Matthews, do you have anything you wish to add personally? This was the moment I had rehearsed with Marcus. I stood slowly, maintaining my composure, despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Without speaking, I approached the bench and handed the judge a sealed envelope containing my complete medical records, along with documentation, showing Christy had accessed them multiple times through the hospital system. The judge opened the envelope and began reading. His expression changed from professional neutrality to shock, then to quiet anger. After several minutes of silence that felt like hours, he looked up. Marshal, he said, firmly lock down this courtroom immediately. Christy's lawyer dropped his papers in surprise as 2 military police officers entered the courtroom. They had been waiting outside at Marcus's arrangement with the district attorney, who had been notified of the potential fraud case. What is the meaning of this? Burke sputtered. Judge Thornton's voice was cold steel. Mr. Burke, these documents suggest your client has committed multiple federal crimes, including identity theft, insurance fraud, falsifying government documents, and perjury. I am ordering Mrs. Matthews to remain in custody pending investigation. Christy jumped to her feet. This is ridiculous. You cannot do this to me, Mrs. Matthews. The judge continued. Given the evidence presented, this court finds no basis for your paternity claim against Lieutenant Matthews. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. Christy attempted to flee toward the door with the stroller, but one of the military police officers blocked her path. The twins began crying, adding to the chaos of the moment. I stood frozen, watching the scene unfold, like I was observing it from outside my body. This woman, who I had loved and trusted, had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to defraud not just me, but the military benefits system and the court. As Christy was handcuffed, she looked at me with pure hatred. "You ruined everything," she hissed. I finally found my voice. "No, Christy. You did this to yourself." The judge ordered the children to be placed in temporary custody with child services until their biological father could be identified. As they were wheeled out, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. These innocent children were caught in their mother's web of deceit. Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "It is not over, but this is a significant victory. The fraud investigation will likely uncover even more." He was right. I had won this battle, but the war for my dignity and recovery was just beginning. The aftermath of the courtroom confrontation unfolded over the following months, like a complex military operation. The district attorney launched a full investigation into Christie's activities, uncovering a pattern of fraud that stretched back years. Christie had been involved in similar schemes before targeting military personnel specifically. 2 other servicemen had been paying child support for children that were not theirs, both deployed when the claims were filed. The investigation revealed that Christie had worked with a doctor at the military hospital to falsify DNA test results and medical records. The most shocking discovery came 3 weeks after the court hearing. DNA testing revealed the twins' biological father was Dr. Jason Bennett, the same doctor who had helped Christie falsify records. He had been having an affair with Christie for over 2 years, including during periods when I was home between deployments. Dr. Bennett, faced with overwhelming evidence and seeking leniency, confessed everything. He had met Christie when they worked together at the hospital. Their affair began shortly after my second deployment. When I was injured, they saw an opportunity. With access to my medical records, they knew I could not father children, making me the perfect target for their scheme. Christie was charged with multiple felonies: fraud, identity theft, falsification of government documents, and perjury. Dr. Bennett faced similar charges, along with violations of medical ethics. Both accepted plea deals, rather than face trial, with Christie sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. The legal victory should have brought me closure, but the emotional wounds were far deeper than any legal proceeding could address. I returned to an empty house that no longer felt like home, haunted by memories and betrayal. My unit offered me extended leave, recognizing the psychological impact of what had happened. I spent weeks in a fog, alternating between anger and devastating sadness. My parents offered to have me stay with them in Pennsylvania, but I needed to work through this on my own terms. The brotherhood of my unit became my lifeline. James Parker and several other teammates made sure I was never alone for too long sometimes, just sitting silently with me, understanding that words were insufficient. 4 months after the court case, I made a decision that surprised even me. I contacted child services about the twins, Michael and Sophia. Dr. Bennett had accepted responsibility for the children after DNA confirmation and was granted custody following his sentencing, which included probation and community service. His parents were helping with childcare while he served weekends in county jail. I requested a meeting with Dr. Bennett, not out of forgiveness, but from concern for the children who had been pawns in this terrible game. We met in a coffee shop, the tension between us palpable. "Why did you want to see me?" he asked, unable to meet my eyes. "The kids," I responded simply. "They are innocent in all this. I want to know they are okay." Our conversation was strained but productive. The children were healthy, being well cared for by their grandparents. Bennett seemed genuinely remorseful, not just for the fraud, but for the impact on 2 innocent children who would someday learn the circumstances of their early years. That meeting marked a turning point in my healing process. I realized I had been defining myself by what had happened to me rather than who I chose to be moving forward. The next day, I requested a transfer to Fort Lewis in Washington State, needing a fresh environment free from reminders of Christie. The Army assigned me to a training role working with new Special Forces candidates. The work was demanding but rewarding, giving me purpose during a time when I desperately needed it. I also began attending a support group for veterans, finding unexpected comfort in sharing experiences with others who understood military life and its unique challenges. It was through this group that I met Amanda Reeves, a military psychologist who specialized in trauma and betrayal. Initially, she was just the group facilitator, but her insights and compassion impressed me. After several months, when I was in a healthier place emotionally, I asked her to coffee. Amanda was different from Christy in every way. Where Christy had been outwardly charming but ultimately self-serving, Amanda was genuinely kind, honest to a fault, and dedicated to helping others. Our relationship developed, slowly built on mutual respect and transparent communication. 2 years after the courtroom confrontation, I received my honorable discharge from the Army after 12 years of service. Amanda and I had been dating for a year, and I was ready for a new chapter. I used my military experience and education benefits to earn certifications in security consulting, eventually starting a small firm that specialized in helping veterans transition to civilian careers. In a strange twist of fate, Dr. Bennett contacted me before moving to Oregon with the twins, now 3 years old. He asked if I wanted to meet them, feeling they should know all the people who had been part of their story. I agreed, not out of obligation, but from a place of healing. Meeting Michael and Sophia was surprisingly peaceful. They were energetic, curious children, with no awareness of the adult complications surrounding their existence. I brought them small gifts and spent an afternoon playing in the park, knowing this would likely be our only meeting, but wanting them to have at least one positive memory with me. As they played doctor, Bennett said something unexpected. "You would have been a good father, Matthews. Better than me, probably." I thought about his words for a long time afterward. The path I had envisioned with Christy, including children, had been a mirage. But the future with Amanda held its own promises. 6 months later, I proposed to her at Mount Rainier, our favorite hiking spot. Today, 4 years after returning from my 4th and final tour, my life bears little resemblance to what I had planned. Amanda and I are married, living in Tacoma with our rescue dog Cooper. My security consulting business has grown to employ 6 other veterans. Amanda continues her work with military personnel and their families. Christy was released from prison last year. I heard she moved to Florida, starting over far from the scenes of her crimes. I no longer harbor anger toward her, having learned that resentment only gave her continued power over my life. The freedom from that bitterness has been the greatest victory of all. Sometimes the medals we earn are not the ones pinned to our chest, but the scars we heal within ourselves. Those invisible victories define who we become. What unseen battles have you overcome that shaped your life? Share your story in the comments below, and subscribe if this resonated with you. Like this video if you believe in second chances, and share it with someone who might need to hear that betrayal does not have to be the end of their story. Thank you for listening, and remember, your resilience is your greatest strength.